Am I live? Yes, I'm live. Praise the Lord. It's me, Ari Dosset. For those who follow this channel, Rashid. I'm back with another live. This live is going to be about brainwashing. And as always, I'll start at 4 minutes. So when you're here, let me know the live chat, please. I'll start at 4 minutes. There's going to be a live stream about brainwashing. It's going to be an audio live, so there will be no whiteboard and no screen sharing. And when you're here, please let me know the live chat and please hit the like button. That will also benefit this live stream being shared by YouTube, by the algorithm. And if you aren't subscribed yet, please subscribe to this channel. Thank you very much. I see Suzanne is here. Cannon is here. Bridge is here. Therese is here. Thank you all for being here. Thanks for the thumbs up. Again, I'll start at 4 minutes. So within 3 minutes, I'll begin. Well, Lad is here also. That is good. I closed on all the other apps, so I don't expect any disruption during this live. Justin, I'm glad you're here. All right. Again, I'll start at 4 minutes. So when you're here, please come in. And for those that have been here already, let me know if you can hear me clearly. It's quite important in an audio live that you can hear me clearly. Dawn, I'm glad you're here, Dawn. Nadine, I'm glad you're here. Right? Within 2 minutes, I'll begin. All right, I'm back. Within half a minute, I'll begin. See, the other Justin is here also. Danielle is here. Okay, someone talks about PTA. Who's PTA? Or permission to exist. Oh, okay. Oh, that interview was a while ago. Okay. I'm not sure if she invited me to another interview, but I'll check it out. But anyway, for now, I'm going to focus on this message. And so let me see. Oh, okay, 4 minutes has passed, so the class has begun. Again, hit the like button if you haven't done it yet. All right, brainwashing. Tammy, I'm glad you're here. The term brainwashing. When you hear brainwashing, you might feel uncomfortable. Why? Because you were conditioned to be uncomfortable when you hear brainwashing. The same way you get uncomfortable when you hear cuss words like cunt, shit, fuck, asshole, and you name it. You've been conditioned to get upset when you hear certain things. That's a conditioning. Now, if I use the word manipulation, some people get horrified. Why? Because others use manipulation at their expense. But hold on, manipulation simply means that you influence an outcome. When you influence an outcome on purpose, that's manipulation. If you put it, when the government puts traffic signs out there, they're manipulating the behavior of the public on the road. Is that a bad thing? No. When you put a rule in place that children are not allowed to be in the kitchen, is to keep the children safe from hurting themselves. That's manipulation because you're on purpose influencing an outcome. If you're cooking, then you're manipulating physical ingredients, namely vegetables, fruit, sometimes also meat and fish, and you end up having a meal. When you go to a job interview, you manipulate the situation by dressing quote unquote properly. When you go to a party, you dress in a party style. That's also manipulation. So manipulation just on purpose influencing an outcome. Now you can do this you can do this with a good intention or with a wrong intention. And if you have the right intention, you can do it the right way or the wrong way. That's something else. But manipulation in itself, there's nothing wrong nor evil about it. Unfortunately, too many people misuse manipulation. Now, what I just explained here is that we have been conditioned to be horrified at certain things. And often we don't even know why we're horrified by them. Now, this is a good introduction for the topic of brainwashing, because the term brainwashing in Dutch is hersenspoelen. It really means you're washing the brain. Now, nobody literally washes anyone's brain because that's not possible. Your brain is in your body. So washing refers to purging out something. When you wash the dishes or you wash your clothes, you're purging the dirt or the imperfection out of the clothes or from the dishes. So the term brainwashing is used for the following. Brainwashing is used for people who are stuck with a group's mindset. Because groups can also have a collective mindset to hold on to. Those are the common values that people share together in a group. Does this mean that every group you belong to, you're brainwashed by that group? No, absolutely not. Again, everyone has been conditioned and everyone has been shaped by the environment. And I don't care how old you are, you will always be shaped by your environment. If you go outside and it's 38 degrees Celsius, you will wear fewer clothes. If you go outside and it's freezing, you'll put on more clothes. You're influenced by the environment. The same way, socially, you're influenced by the environment. If a police officer or a judge in front of you, you'll talk different to them than when it's a neighbor that you're carpooling with or that you are watching football with. So the social context always influences your behavior. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just how humans are designed. So to be conditioned and to be shaped by the environment is natural. There's nothing wrong about that. Brainwashing, there is one element in brainwashing that makes it dangerous. Just one element. If you understand this element, you figure out brainwashing altogether. And remember, brainwashing is also used in politics. Politics, it's used in churches, it's used in families, in sexual relationships. So brainwashing isn't just a psychological thing. It's a political tool, and it's also, in some cases, the way an organization functions, because you also have companies that brainwash their employees. What it comes down to is that in brainwashing, you are psychologically isolated. Just write it down for yourself. Psychologically isolated. And if you can repeat it in the live chat, repeat for me. Psychologically isolated. That's the term you need to remember about brainwashing. If you understand this term, psychologically isolated, then you get it all. There is no brainwashing without psychological isolation. Now, you can have psychological isolating without any brainwashing. That is when someone is traumatized and they're going through a rough time and they have difficulty processing the past. In that case, people tend to be psychologically isolated. But there's no brainwashing. But every brainwashing needs psychological isolation. And this is how it works. You are tricked into not looking further. That's it. All right, so let me give you a short parable to see how weird this is. Let's say you're on the road. You're driving towards a resort. You're on holiday. You rent a car. And then at some point, you reach the resort. But then you have to go back to get some gas. But then people tell you, when you go out to get gas, don't look on the horizon. Only look to the left. Don't look to the right at all. When you drive the car, don't look to the right. Only look to the left. Now, would you follow what the people are saying to you? When you drive on the road, only look to the left. Don't look to the right. And they insist on you, don't look to the right. Only look to the left. Now, for those who are familiar with driving cars, or for those who participate in traffic anyway, you know you need to look at both sides, left and right. You can't drive a car only look to the left. What if on the right side there's a truck coming and you don't see it? If someone tell you that when you drive a car only look to the left, you would avoid it. You would think like this individual is crazy. But that is what happens with brainwashing. You are tricked into a restriction that naturally you would never accept. And why do you fall for this restriction? You fall for it because you were going through a transition in your life, or you were at your most vulnerable because you were under attack. When you're under attack, or when you go through a transition, where transition is that you complete high school, you go to college, or you graduate college, or you got a new job, or you got married, or you're going through a divorce, or your children are moving out of the house, whatever the transition is, when you go through a transition, you're at your most vulnerable as a human being. That's just a matter of fact. It's just the way it is. Because you have to adapt to a new situation. Or when you're under attack, of course, you're at your most vulnerable. When you're either under attack or you go through a transition, you are at your most vulnerable. And during those seasons of uncertainty, you want to be certain of something. And it's this clinging onto certainty that human beings have that evildoers, as well as evil spirits, take advantage of. That you want certainty, there's nothing wrong with that. But the certainty you should look for should come from the Heavenly Father. Every certainty outside of the Heavenly Father is a con. Every certainty outside the Heavenly Father is a con. So, if any certainty you hold on to excludes the Heavenly Father or is not in line with Christ, it's a con. You have been conned. And the con artists trick you into restriction. And this is how worldly people are. Worldly people are all about restrictions. Worldly people worship restrictions. So to them, it's easy to be brainwashed because they're into restrictions anyway. And they then want to restrict you to feel good about themselves. That's the fallen psychology of fallen mankind. So it's quite easy to brainwash worldlings. But you may ask, is it possible to brainwash a believer? Only if the believer is not renewed in his or her mind. The moment a believer is renewed in his or her mind, you cannot brainwash them anymore. You can still trick them. It's possible to trick anyone, but actually brainwash someone, you need their involvement. And this is what people don't understand. Brainwashing is not something you can just do to someone. Brainwashing requires the participation of the one you're brainwashing. Now, you're not going to tell someone, hey, I'm going to brainwash you, because then it won't work. With brainwashing, you suggest or you enforce a restriction. And you keep mentioning this restriction is beneficial. That's what you do. The restriction doesn't have to be logical, The restriction doesn't have to be practical at all. The restriction doesn't even have to be beneficial. But as long as you keep repeating the restriction and keep hammering on the restriction, this consistency of hammering on restriction will make people, because it's a natural fact that it does, when you keep hammering on something, people develop a familiarity with it. And once people are familiar with the restriction, they begin to believe that restriction has a purpose. For example, if you tell a 10-year-old to be at home at 8 p.m., that restriction is valuable because there are child predators out there who want to kick them children, all of that. So you want to be sure that child is at home at some point because hey, your child needs to go to sleep also to go to school. So that restriction at 10 years old for the child is proper. But if your son or daughter is 25 and you're not even living at your house anymore, it's not proper to expect them to be at home before 8 in their own house. That's a restriction that you cannot justify. It's not even beneficial because hey, they're grown-ups living in their own home and they need to be out sometimes late at night. So you can't put a restriction on them. But what it comes down to is that with brainwashing, you believe so much in the usefulness of the restriction that you don't even question whether the restriction should even be there. Now look, brainwashing cannot be done with a restriction that's obviously ridiculous. Just like I mentioned before, if someone tells you that when you drive your car, only look to the left, you would tell them, hey, I can't listen to this. Because if I only look to the left, I end up crashing with my car or killing myself or someone else. So you wouldn't fall for that. But a restriction will work if the restriction suggests inclusion towards you. Let me give an example. And this is how they did it in Nazi Germany, because I'm going to use Nazi Germany again as an example. Now, there are more examples I can use, but I'm going to begin with Nazi Germany because it's a popular example people use. When Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party wanted to gain power over the masses in the Weimar Republic, what they did was they first suggested the restriction because they didn't have power over the people yet to just enforce it. So first they suggested a restriction. The restriction was avoid Jews. Now, if someone tell you out of the blue to avoid the Jews, you would think, okay, why? There are people just like me. They have families just like we have families. They need to go to work too. Well, what's going on? Why should we avoid them? So when they gave the suggestion to avoid the Jews, they associated their suggestion with safety and inclusion. So when they kept repeating this, indirectly, sometimes directly, the public developed familiarity with this restriction. So eventually, the people got used to hearing that the Jews were not allowed. So then, because the public became familiar with excluding the Jews on a symbolic level, now the Nazi Party went to the physical enforcement. And now that was happening physically, Jews had to carry a star, a yellow star, or they were banned from certain places. They were not allowed to publish anything in their language. Some of the gatherings were banned also. What happened then was that the public was involved in what's going on. Because if the Nazis would have come and just sent police officers on the Jews just like that, everyone would have revolted. They first had to massage the minds of the public. Because remember, the Weimar Republic or the German Empire back then, it was a republic because the royals forfeited their thrones. The German emperor lived in the Netherlands back then, instead of running the empire. So what went on was that the public in the Weimar Republic felt humiliated and abandoned. So they were traumatized. They were a republic, but there was no certainty on what would happen. They were a public in a transition, and it wasn't clear what the future would bring. So the public was at its most vulnerable. And again, as I mentioned before, when people are at the most vulnerable, go to a transition, or when they're under attack, it's then that you can get power over them easily. So the Nazi Party, they addressed the sorrows of the public by doing that. The public felt hurt and recognized. That's the first thing you do. And then you tell the public, once people feel included, now they're more open to what you have to say. And now the Nazis came with the accusation, well, a lot of the crime committed in the Deutsches Reich is by Jews. Now, there were Jews committing crimes, absolutely, but they focus mainly on the Jews. What about the other ethnic groups that committed crimes? No, we don't talk about those. Focus on the Jews. So the public kept being exposed to misbehavior by Jews. That kept happening. So eventually the public developed resistance against Jews committing crime. But here's the thing, it weren't only Jews committing crime, but they used this. And eventually, when the public became fed up, they came with restriction, avoid the Jews. And they kept repeating it. Now, mind you, the public already developed some resistance towards Jews committing crime. Now, at this point, the public didn't really believe that all the Jews were bad or anything like that. They didn't. They were just against Jews committing crime. But here's the thing, why is only the Jewish criminals that were highlighted? It was because for the next step, now you want all the Jews to be under restriction. And by suggesting this restriction, remember, worldlings are all about restrictions, worldlings being considerate. So eventually, actions were taken against the Jews, and it appeared as if things became better. But then, well, Adolf and his cult decided to invade Austria. The problem was, Austria had a lot of Jews living in it. Many of them fled the Deutsches Reich. By annexing Austria, now they have to deal with the Jews again. I thought you want to get rid of the Jews, so why are you invading a country that has many Jews in it? Many of those Jews are Jews that you banned from your country. So here you can see that the policy of the Nazi Germany wasn't consistent. And then they want to take in over Poland, who also had a lot of Jews. Then they came with this excuse saying that German people needed Lebensraum. Lebensraum is German for space to live. The Germans didn't like any space to live. They didn't. But anyway, by this time, the public was so invested already in what the Nazis were saying that they didn't realize how far things have gone. So after years of pampering the public with restrictions concerning the Jews, eventually the public was so used to Jews being restricted that the public felt better off, that at least they were not like the Jews. So now the public received narcissistic supply because they could look at their own life and realize, even though I don't have a job, even though I'm on benefits, even though my wife left me, hey, at least I'm not like this Jewish man over here who's smacked around by the police. So he's being smacked around by the police brutality. He's being put in prison regularly. I'm not, so I'm better off. So the restriction became an identifier for the people. People identify themselves with its restriction. We, the German people, or we, the white Europeans, they, the Jews. So that's all they did. They insisted on a restriction. And that's all the Nazis did. And the public became invested in this restriction. So at some point, people were not thinking clearly anymore. At some point, their mental health depended on being part of this restriction. And it's after the Second World War that the people were forced to face how ridiculous restriction was, and the denazification in Europe began. Well, the denazification of the United States, it never happened, but okay, that's another topic. Now, let's look at another example. Let's go to China, how China became a socialist nation under Mao Zedong. Mao Zedong did the exact same thing, but instead of the Jews, he used another restriction, namely against the liberals. The liberal Chinese became the no-go zone. And there were more restrictions that Mao Zedong came up with. And remember, China has been an empire since the 3rd century BC. So China had centuries of being an empire. So the public there were used to being under imperial rule. So now that the liberals came with Western influences, the public were comfortable because it was a transition they were not ready for. Then Mao Zedong came and he went against the liberals, so the public felt vindicated. Well, okay, but then Mao Zedong turned on the public itself, but they weren't even aware when Mao Zedong turned on them. Some say that this cultural revolution cost the life of 60 million Chinese people. Some say 100 million. I'm not sure how many died, but a lot of people died with ethnic cleansings that happened. So what it comes down to is that the brainwashing only worked because there was psychological isolation that happened. If Mao Zedong would have come and he would have negotiated with the liberals and with the traditional people, it would have been brainwashing. It would have been an open negotiation. But because there was a restriction from the start, a restriction without any justification, that's why it's brainwashing. Now, don't get things twisted. Restrictions can be justified. If you work in a hospital, there is a restriction that only authorized staff members are allowed to come at certain places. Why? Because if unauthorized people can just come in and out of the hospital, things may go wrong. People may steal corpses, people may steal medicine, people may steal morphine to sell in the streets. So the restriction that only authorized staff is allowed to enter in is a restriction you can justify, and it's practical. And it's a restriction you can explain to people. You can demonstrate to people why the restriction is necessary. Brainwashing is when you have a restriction you cannot justify and you cannot show why the restriction is needed, but you keep hampering, you keep insisting on the restriction. And brainwashing can happen in two ways. Either people endorse the restriction or they resist it. Both endorsement and resistance both generate brainwashing. Why? Because if people embrace restriction, that means that they don't look further. They just accept everything that comes with restriction. If people resist it, they develop an identity against the restriction. So now the restriction becomes part of them. So they don't have to be in agreement with restriction. The fact they're fighting opposing restriction means that the restriction becomes part of them. They now identify as people against this restriction, and now they need to form another group to identify themselves with. So brainwash can happen in two ways, either by endorsement or by resistance. So just because people resist something doesn't mean that they're not part of it. The moment you keep resisting something, you become part of thing you're resisting, because your resistance validates the importance of thing you're resisting. Because if the thing you're resisting was not that relevant, you wouldn't be resisting it. So you resisting it makes it relevant and keeps it relevant. That is why Satan wants us to fight him, even though Satan knows he's already lost. Why would Satan, who already lost and who knows he will continue to lose, wants us to fight him so that he remains relevant? As simple as that. Also, individual narcissists want you to fight and argue with them, because the more you fight and argue with them, the more focused on them you are, and the less other things you can do in your life. Narcissists can withhold good things from you by tricking you to fight them. The moment you walk away from narcissists and you shake dust off your feet, now you can do more in life. But if you keep fighting them, you're stuck in being exhausted and being traumatized. That's why Jesus told us, don't resist an evil person. Jesus did not mean that we just have to accept everything evil people do. He just made plain, if you do resist, you resist the devil, but you do it God's way. I don't think resistance in itself is wrong, but how you resist and why you resist matters. So, now you know how brainwashing works. Psychological isolation. Now, can you prevent brainwashing? Now, brainwashing is something that happens all the time in the world. But one clear red flag of brainwashing is a sudden restriction. For example, let's say you're in university and you have this Bible study group that comes out. Okay? So you think, hey, it's a Bible study group. I can meet fellow believers. Of course. So you think, hey, there's something in it for me. Fellow believers, we can fellowship. So you join the Bible study group. When you go to the Bible study group, people begin to read the Bible, they begin to pray. You go to history, so think, hey, it's a good group. And suddenly they expect you to spend more time in the Bible study group. So they want you to come more nights to the Bible study. At first, think, hey, this fellowship with fellow believers, of course I want to be here more often. What they're actually telling you is, we don't want you to go anywhere else on Wednesday evening. We want you to be here. But when they began to insist in having more Bible studies during the week, you didn't realize that there was a restriction we're putting on you. You just thought, hey, I'm fellowship with fellow believers here. This is a good thing. So of course I want to contribute to a good thing. But there was a restriction. So you would go out more often to Bible Bible class. After 2 or 3 months, you realize that, hold on a minute. The only people you have interaction with in your life are people of the Bible study group. All the other friends and family you used to be involved with, you don't barely talk to those people anymore. You've been psychologically isolated. Now, but because it's a Bible study group and there's a noble cause, understanding God's words, you don't notice that they've used the Bible to trick you into a cult. So, but once you are stuck over there and they have power over you, now comes the second restriction. You're only allowed to talk to people who understand the Bible just like you do. Because if you just talk to people who don't understand the Bible like you do, there may be a misunderstanding. Now you get uncomfortable, but because it's a group of believers, you think, hey, it must be okay. Long story short, eventually you end up being financially and sexually exploited by this church that you never intend to be part of. And now you think, how did I end up here? Look, when you hear that there was a Bible study group, that, hey, I would join, why not? That was the bait. When you arrived there, you were welcomed. Hey, you felt at home. And the activity was there, studying the Bible. You generate a bond with the people. All good. Nothing wrong till now. But then came the pressure on you. And the pressure was to trap you. Because by you being there almost every evening with Bible study, they know where you are. And they know where you're not. And because you were often there with Bible study, you had no options to other things. Maybe you were learning Russian, okay? Because in the future you wanted to trade with Russia, for example. Or maybe you were learning Chinese, but now because you're at the Bible study group almost every evening, you can't learn Russian nor Chinese anymore. So now you've been hindered in that. But you don't see it as hindrance. And before you know it, you end up being drained and something good is held from you. And then you realize that now after 3 years, after you leave the culture, you realize, Donovan, I wasted 3 years of my life. I was learning Russian and Chinese back then. If I would have continued to learn Russian and Chinese, I would have been fluent in both languages right now, and I would be able to do business, participate in business meetings. So now you realize something better was withheld from you. You thought that being part of the Bible study group was something good. And was something good, but that something good was used against you. Demons will use good things against you. So demons offered you this fellowship with those churchgoers, which you thought were real believers, just to prevent you from being fluent in business with Asia. Because you being fluent in business with Asia by learning Russian and Chinese would enable you to generate money, which you now could use to support other believers financially. And demons didn't want that to happen because demons knew that the moment you begin to generate money and you begin to invest in fellow believers, demons begin to lose their grip on the population. So demons begin to see you as a threat. So demons could not tell you, stop learning Chinese, stop learning Russian. Because if demons would do that, he would say, I must continue doing it. So demons distract you with something that you didn't need, but you thought it was an addition to you. And that's how they restricted you from becoming this business, the professional businessman or businesswoman that you could have become to benefit the kingdom of God. So understand evil spirits as well as bad people in general, they want to withhold better from you. So they pretend as if there's something to offer you, but they really don't. By the way, Aaron, thanks very much for your super chat donation. Same for you, Suzanne. Thank you very much. So think about it. If you are a believer, demons are not going to send an advertisement to you. Hey, red light districts opens. Hot Russian girls. 20 euros an hour. Please come. Because the demons know you would click it away or you would report it to Facebook. So the demons are not going to do that. The demons may use that on an unbeliever who's about to have a breakthrough. But with you, the demons are coming something biblical or something Christian or something in line with your values. So that's why we need discernment. Because evil spirits will use good things to brainwash you. Because remember, brainwashing is all about psychological isolation. They will misquote scripture and misuse scripture to restrict you. For example, you have those cults out there who do double separation. Now, the only separation we as believers have is that we don't fellowship with unbelievers. Why? Because that's an unequal yoke. That will not go well. But we're not double separated. It's not as if all believers have to go to some Pacific island and just only be around other believers. That's not what God wants for us. But there are cults out there that trick you into double separation. And you're not even aware you're being pushed into double separation. But it first psychologically isolates you. And because you're psychologically isolated, you can't think no process properly anymore. That's why a lot of people that are part of cults, once they leave the cult, they behave quite differently. Now look, I told you already, being shaped and being influenced is one thing. But the moment you get restrictions on you that just fall out of the blue, that you cannot understand, that's brainwashing. Let me give another example. Let's say you're married, and one day your husband comes at home and suddenly begins to shout at you. He's upset. And he says something as, why don't you ever consider my feelings? And you, the wife, you're shocked because your husband never acted this way. So you now think, okay, I'm married. I'm into this with him. What goes on? You want to go into therapy because you want to find out where you neglected your husband. Oh, I have news for you. You never neglected your husband. You didn't neglect him sexually, nor emotionally, nor at any level. He is the reprobate. He's the narcissist over here. And he wants to brainwash you into thinking that you are the one that's wrong, so that you will be so focused on improving yourself that you've noticed that he is taking advantage of you. He may be cheating on you with multiple women. He may be doing all types of weird stuff behind the scenes, but he wants you to think that you're the one at fault. So he shocks you with an allegation, and because of that, you become focused on what can I do to make it better. You're psychologically isolated. So whether it's a government or a political party or mainstream media or a cult or a simple individual narcissist, it's the same blueprint. Insist on a restriction, and when you do this, people develop familiarity with it, and familiarity, if it's not stopped, will lead to psychological isolation. As simple as that. So that is why whatever group or organization you encounter, look at the bigger picture. And by the way, the crisis the world seems to forget, you guys know which crisis I'm talking about. Oh, it has similarities to what I'm talking about. Now, I'm not saying that the crisis was fake or that the crisis never happened. I'm not promoting conspiracy theories over here. I'm just saying that the crisis has some brainwashing elements in it. Some misused this crisis to come up with all types of weird ideas. But anyway, hope you get what I'm saying here, or which crisis I'm talking about. And here's one thing you don't understand about brainwashing. The psychological isolation is to keep you in this dualistic thinking, us versus them, me versus you. They want you to keep thinking in opposites. A similar thing happens right now with this Russia and Ukraine thing. You're either for Russia or you're for Ukraine. But here's the thing. What if both Russia and Ukraine are wrong and this whole thing is a setup to keep us in the negative? What about that? You're a conspiracy theorist, they would say. They overwhelm you with images of Ukrainians on the run and their lives being destroyed. Okay, that's sad indeed. And others tell you, well, okay, Russia does this, but there's a good reason because there are child traffickers over there. Okay, but there are no child traffickers in the United States. Are you kidding me? Oh, so that means that Russia can also bomb the United States because there are child traffickers over there then. And there's no child trafficking in Russia. So you see what this does? Psychological isolation tricks you into not looking beyond. Again, remember what I said in the beginning of this live stream. If you are about to drive your car, someone tells you only look to your left or only look to your right, you would limit or cut communication with that individual because it's a restriction that cannot be justified. A restriction is quite dangerous. Drive a car, only look to the left and see if the police will not arrest you. They will. You may even lose your driver's license. Now, what to do if you think you've been brainwashed? One thing about brainwashing that nobody can deny, you have an involvement. At some point, you believed in the restriction. Now, that doesn't mean that you're a dump or that you're bad or that you brought it on yourself or that you get what you deserve. No. But you believe in the restriction. So I want you to evaluate the restriction that you were tricked into. And the more you look at the restriction, the more you realize, why am I doing this? So if you think you've been brainwashed, just look at the bigger picture, look at the whole situation. Once you look at the whole situation, you will pick up more things. The reason why many people never realize they've been brainwashed is because they are invested in this tunnel vision. The psychological isolation develops a tunnel vision in which the only thing you can see is what you're being told. So there may be maybe crime in the streets, and you're fed up with crime in the streets. And then mainstream media tells you about how you can solve crime with having more police officers on the street. And now, because you hold on this restriction of always getting along with society, now you see people that don't get along with society, they cause trouble, and now you keep holding on the restriction. You want them to be punished, and you only want to hear about them being punished and you being the good guy. That's a tunnel vision. The moment you have this tunnel vision, demons have a grip over you, and society has power over you. As simple as that. So if you notice that you feel like you're being brainwashed, check if you have a tunnel vision. A tunnel vision is when you refuse to look at the bigger picture. You refuse to look at the whole situation. Okay, you may hear on the news that a rapper hit a woman. And you think, oh Lord, violence against women. Who does this man think he is? He needs to be locked up. But then they show you video footage of how the woman was screaming at him, throwing objects at him, and when he walked away, she even followed him towards his hotel room. And it's only after she attacked him physically that he slapped her just to and close the door. So he didn't go off just hitting a woman. He just slapped her to stop her from physically attacking him. But here's the thing. If you hear that a man hit a woman and that's your tunnel vision, you say, oh, a man should never hit a woman. Oh, he's bad. He must go to prison. Even when they show you other facts that he only hit her out of self-defense or because he was pushed to, you would still want to blame the guy as if he's the only one at fault. Why? Because you're in a tunnel vision. So once you notice that you have a tunnel vision, listen, you have been brainwashed. That means demons as well as bad people have a grip on you. As simple as that. How do you get out of brainwashing? You have to go and you may have to do some therapy and some inner healing, absolutely. But the number one thing to get out of brainwashing is to admit that you are being, how do I say, is that you are being exploited. Brainwashing is about exploiting people. If you're brainwashed, someone or some evil spirits are exploiting you. Once you admit this, the spell breaks off of you. Now, spells don't last that long, but brainwashing is a type of spell you eventually keep on yourself by believing in the restriction. So brainwashing always requires your involvement. And that's why there is something you can do about it. There's no such thing as a brainwashing you can do nothing about, because the brainwashing requires your participation anyway. So that is why people who are not stressed out, people that are not occupied, that are not busy with paying bills and surviving, they're quite dangerous to society. Because the more at peace and the more at ease you are, the quicker you will notice oddities. When you're traumatized and exhausted, you don't think clearly and you can't process things clearly. So it's quite easy for you to be brainwashed. The moment you're in your right mind, because you are relaxed and at peace, there are certain things you will never accept. Again, if you recognize you've been brainwashed and you need therapy, go into therapy. If you need prayers from other people, you do that and process what happened to you. It's not easy to admit that you've been brainwashed. And always remember, it's one element of brainwashing that makes it brainwashing: psychological isolation. Without psychological isolation, it's not brainwashing. Simple as that. Mainstream media, as well as advertisements out there, always seek to brainwash you by putting restrictions on you that you otherwise wouldn't have. For example, let's say that you have this commercial for a Marlboro cigarette, and they show you cowboys riding horses, muscular, strong men riding horses as cowboys, and they're smoking. I'm sorry, but what does muscular men riding a horse have to do with smoking tobacco? Absolutely nothing. But they're suggesting to you that by smoking tobacco, you will be more masculine. So what is the restriction over here? The restriction is avoid people who don't want to be masculine. You want to be masculine as a man, so you know what to do: smoke. People that don't want to smoke, so bad they don't want to be masculine. That is the restriction they suggest onto you. Now, if you begin to purchase cigarettes and smoke them, eventually, subconsciously, you believe the restriction, and you end up only dealing with people who smoke just like you. You develop intimate ties with fellow smokers, and people who don't smoke, you tend to estrange from them. And so how this goes, that's how you get brainwashed. So, brainwashing doesn't have to be done by a warlock or by a witch or by a wizard. Common people out there who have a basic knowledge of psychology can also brainwash you. That's why the antidote to brainwashing is to look at the bigger picture. Once you're used to look at the bigger picture, I'm not saying it's completely impossible, but it's going to be quite hard for anyone to brainwash you. So that is why society wants you exhausted and tired all the time. If you're not exhausted nor tired, that's quite hard to brainwash you. Quite hard. In some cases, it's even impossible to brainwash certain people. Certain people, it's impossible to brainwash them because they're so alert about what goes on around them. So understand, you can be brainwashed without you being aware of it. You, you don't have to give consent or permission to be brainwashed. Brainwashing happens to you. But once you notice it goes on, you can always realize, hold on a minute, it goes too far, or what is this? And believers renewed in their mind, it's impossible to brainwash them because of their attitude. Now, it is possible to brainwash anyone except when they are renewed in their mind. Now, a lot of people are just used by evil spirits to brainwash you. Those people are not aware that demons are using them. So those people don't mean you harm. Don't lose it against the tools. Evict the scam and con artist. Cast out the evil spirits, shut down the paranormal operations, and learn how to deal with a human being in a proper way. Because often the people that are brainwashing you, they're not even aware they're doing it because they've been brainwashed themselves. And you know who are the most easiest people to brainwash? Those that think that nobody can fool them. Those that think that nobody can fool them are already fooled. So they're already brainwashed because they believe in their own ability, and their own ability can't even resurrect them from the dead. Their own ability can't even guarantee they're alive tomorrow. Their own abilities can't guarantee anything. But they have so much trust in their own abilities that they're already brainwashed. So brainwashing happens all the time, and it's quite easy to do. The easiest tool of gaining power over people is brainwashing. You don't need much money to brainwash people at all. Amen, Chuba. Chuba says this explains why reprobates start the same fight over and over again. They want you wounded so that they can easily exploit you. Yes, the more something's repeated, the more familiar you become with it. And the once you're familiar, it becomes a trigger for you. There's nothing wrong with being familiar with something. Familiarity is the way we learn, the way we communicate with other people. But familiarity can also be used against you. Amen. So when you see that other people are brainwashed, this is what you do. You pray for them, you check what the condition is, and if the brainwashing involves something sexual, like a sexual relationship, keep your distance. Sexual brainwashing is one of the most powerful exploitations that exist. Sexual brainwashing is actually, it is the most powerful form of exploitation. Why? Because sexual brainwashing is so deeply rooted in you once it happens to you that it may take years for you to figure out what happened. That is why, for example, there are narcissistic women who quickly want to have sex with you, very quickly. And they love to overwhelm you with a lot of sexual intercourse. And a lot of guys out there think, oh, great, she likes me. Man, I found the jackpot. No, dude, you found no jackpot. And by the way, why do you look for a jackpot if you're blessed by the Heavenly Father? She is not a blessing, and she doesn't love you. She doesn't even like you. She just wants to use you as a cover-up, or she wants to have access to your bank account. There's something she wants to exploit from you, and she's overwhelming you with sex now. You're being brainwashed sexually. There are men doing this to women too, overwhelming them with not only sexual attention, but also actual sexual intercourse. And on women, the brainwashing has a deeper effect than on men. Because the fact that women are emotionally wired. I'm not saying men don't have emotions. I didn't say that. But women are more emotionally wired. And because of that, sexual brainwashing has a deeper effect on females. That's why many cults use and recruit women. You have some church out there, 80% of the members are women. And you may ask, where are all the men? Because the men don't fall for it. If you keep overwhelming a man with sexual attention as a female, eventually the man's going to think, okay, what does she really want? Get along with it. Or if you're a man and you keep pampering another man with compliments and with encouragement, the man's going to think, oh, dude, you're a bit weird, man. What the heck are you doing? But a woman, based on how a woman is built, it's easier to brainwash her if you do it consistently. That's why cults love to recruit females. And once a woman is emotionally invested in a cult or in a movement, she becomes an advocate. She becomes like a soldier for that movement. Have you seen those women out there marching in the streets and it seems like they're fighting a war? They're so fierce and so emotional about a cause. They've been brainwashed. And because they're invested in the movement or in the cult has become their god, or the movement has become their father, and they do everything for their father. Love, what's the difference between love bombing and brainwashing? Okay, love bombing is when you overwhelm someone with the message they're welcome. That's what love bombing is. Or you keep suggesting onto them good things can happen to you if you join us. That's love bombing. Brainwashing is when you actually put a restriction on them. When a man overwhelms a woman with sexual intercourse, what he's actually doing is he's controlling her because she's almost always there having sex with them. So she's not around to do her studies or to work or to socialize with other people. She's always there having sexual intercourse with them. That's a restriction he's putting on her. That's what pimps do with the hoes. Absolutely. Or if a woman keeps texting you and she always wants to meet and have sex with you, she is restricting you. Because you can spend time with your relatives, you can spend time with your family, you can spend time at the gym, or you can spend time learning a course or doing a hobby. No, you can't do it because she's always on your neck, want to have sex with you. A lot of guys think that this is a good thing, and it's not. It's a restriction that cannot be justified. I did not intend to talk about sexual or sex-based brainwashing here, but hey, let me do it anyway before I close this live stream. Sexual brainwashing or sex-based brainwashing, you can overcome it. You have to admit that at some point you cherished the restriction. If you never cherished the restriction, the brainwashing would have failed. So a guy who has a woman keep texting him all the time, wanting to meet up, also come to his house, that's a restriction. Namely, I don't want you. What the woman's actually saying with her behavior is, I don't want you to talk with friends. I don't want you to talk with your mom, your dad. I don't want you to watch movies. I don't want you to go to the gym. No, I want you here with me where I know where I got you. That's what she's saying with her attitude. But because the guy gets sex, he thinks, hey, this is an advantage. So he is cherishing the restriction. And because he cherishes restriction, he doesn't realize it's a restriction. And later, when she stops having that much sex with him, he's going to think, what goes on? And now she begins to act nasty towards him. Now she begins to threaten him. And now he thinks, oh, what did I end up with? Dude, when she began to restrict you by overwhelming you with all that sexual attention and sexual contact, that was the point you realized, whoa, why is she so wild over me? Why she should calm down a little bit. The same with the ladies. If a guy has been so intense in texting you, so intense in wanting to be close to you on a sexual level, you should tell him, calm down a little bit. I also have other things to do in life than just having sex with you or talking to you. But the moment you cherish the restriction, you're brainwashed. Now, Sexual brainwashing can also happen the other way around. For example, let's say you have the rainbow community and they want to recruit more women into the sodomite lifestyle. Okay? What they will do is they will send some guys onto you, which are covert sodomites themselves, but those guys will hit on you all the time, texting you all the time, keep talking to you, keep asking your number. Eventually, you get so fed up all the time that those guys keep talking to you, even though you're not comfortable with it. And then, when you're so fed up with those guys, keep pushing on you to get your number, keep pushing you to want to have sex with you. Eventually, once you're so fed up and you're weakened, there's actually an attack on you. Now, those sodomite women will approach you and befriend you. And before you know it, you're in the marches with them, you're in the parades with them, and they have their way with you. You understand me? So sexual brainwashing can also be used to trick you into sodomy or to trick you into other weird things. So, about sexual brainwashing, does some of you recognize what I'm talking about here? Let me know in the live chat. So, does that mean that okay, apart from sexual brainwashing, forget about sexual brainwashing now. Not everyone that's persistent is brainwashing you. If you are driving your car without a seatbelt and people keep insisting you're wearing a seatbelt, they're not brainwashing you. They're just hinting to you, wear your seatbelt. It's not safe to drive without a seatbelt. If you're smoking, people keep insisting you to stop smoking, they're concerned with your health. So yes, they're insisting, but they're not brainwashing you. Not everyone that insists on you is brainwashing you. No. But it's the restriction you need to look out for. If the restriction can be justified, then it's not brainwashing because you can process it. But if the restriction cannot be justified, now you're kept in a shock. That is what you need to look out for. So, brainwashing is summarized in one sentence: restricting you till you're there no more. That's it. So, brainwashing is a form of conning someone. You want to keep something better away from them. Again, that's why in marriages or sexual relationships, narcissists start the same fights over and over again. They want you to keep being occupied with resolving conflicts so you don't realize you're dominant. I'm better off without this individual and I can live a better life. Sometimes the narcissist is guards because he found someone else that they can exploit. So now you understand what brainwashing is. You're better weaponed and alert when it's about to happen to you. And by the way, if you have questions, you can ask them now. I'll stay to answer some questions. I'll stay for a few minutes. If you have no questions, you can leave. That was the class for today, or this class, I mean. If you have any questions, please ask them right now. Thank you very much. All right, I'll wait for another minute to see if questions come. By the way, Chuba, I'll give you a quick audio call. I won't stay long because I know you're busy, just to reflect on this very briefly. Okay? So Keep your WhatsApp open, please. Thank you very much. All right, before I close this live, one more thing I want to say about this Ukraine-Russia situation. Beware, because I can see brainwashing happening right now. And this brainwashing is heading towards blood sacrifice. They want bodies of young men to hit the ground. They want blood to be spilled. That's what I'm seeing is goes on right now. Don't fall for it. Okay, Joe, keeping your children from watching certain things, okay, that's wise to do. At some point, you need to train your children to have a filter so they can process things, because you can't always withhold visuals from your children. All right. Thanks for being here. Keep on agreeing with Christ and be at peace, you all.